Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
You are listening to The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak, connecting the reality of the gospel to the grit of life. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/Noah Filipiak or at noahfilipiak.com/give.
What up, y'all? What up, Flipoponomy? Shout out to the Flipped Off Club. Joined a new member. So Seth, you're accompanied by Daniel now. Daniel wrote into the podcast, wanted to make sure he got included in the Flipped Off Club subset of the Flipoponomy. It's an exclusive club. So welcome one and all to episode 48 of the Flip Side Podcast. Cuatro ocho. That actually means 48, not 48. I took Spanish in high school for 3 years. I do know that. And I don't remember how to say 48, but I know that it is not Cuatro ocho. Episode 48, that is. That works too. Welcome. Hey, we're getting up there. We're almost a big 5-0. Is that the golden anniversary? We'll have to have a big party, a big podcast party. I need some creative help. You can send in your ideas of what we should do to celebrate the episode 50 of The Flip Side. You can write into the show. The best way to do that is podcast at beyondthebattle.net. But I am on social media because I am a millennial. I am one of the first millennials. I'm like a grandfather millennial. I'm 38, and technically, I was kind of sad when I learned I was a millennial. No offense, millennials. I'm one of you. But I was like, yo, I just said because I'm a millennial. You know that was one of my rants. I literally have a note card. See if you can hear this in the mic. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. I'm flicking the note card that I have taped in front of me, and it has the word like on it, and then the no smoking sign sort of through it, the red X. Don't say the word like. When I say it, it is like the coronavirus. You just can't eliminate it from society. No matter how much you try. That was a Noah's Rant. It was one of the Noah's Rants. Speaking of Noah's Rant, I gave a little ultimatum last time, episode 47. I gave a little ultimatum on Noah's Rant. I said, yo, listeners, if you want to keep hearing Noah's Rant, you got to tell me. I got to hear from the flip side, Flipoponomy, from the flipped off. You got to tell me if you want to keep hearing Noah's Rant, because I'm running out of ideas. I need more ideas. And, man, it wears me out. And let me tell you, I called and you answered. Well, not really. Like 2 of you answered. But I'm counting each of you. I think statistically, for everyone that writes into a podcast represents 1,000 people who don't write in, and so I'm including the feedback I did get as the masses that must hear more Noah's Rant. And just so you know, I make up those numbers. I make up those numbers. This podcast is not that popular. I mean, it is. My goal is for this for the Flip Side to be the most popular podcast called The Flip Side. That's what I want. Like when you type in The Flip Side into your podcast finder, that when you type it in, it actually appears on the list. That's my goal. Because it's not the only Flip Side out there. Now, my last name is Filipiak. I am the only one really that has the right to call a podcast The Flip Side, but there are others. There are others out there. We need to take them down. Well, I did hear from you, and Noah's Rant, I'm not going to say it's all the way back. I don't want to get your hopes up. I don't want to promise you things that I can't deliver on. But it lives to fight another day. I can't tell you it's going to win it all, but it is past. It is went on to the next round. It lives to fight another day. So let's jump into the mailbag. Podcast at beyondthebattle.net. You can reach the show. It is mail time.
Mail time. Mail time. Mail time. Mail's here.
All right, so I love this email. It's from Heather. I have never written to a podcast before. Well, welcome to the world of writing a podcast. Glad you chose the flip side to be your first podcast to write into, but then she writes, oh, wait, I think I did several years ago. Well, at least you're honest. I like that. I like that. You don't want to, you got to hold yourself accountable there. All right, please don't get rid of Noah's rants. They make me feel like there is another person out there who does this when I go over and above about the new colostomy bag that just appeared in the supply room. I am a nurse. Okay, we're gonna come back to that here in a moment, but let me continue reading. Another reason to continue Noah's rant is Christian leadership needs to not only teach us it's okay not to be serious all the time, but also teach us how. I will end my plea for Noah's rant to continue by suggesting, and she gave some wonderful suggestions that I'm not going to read to you because I'm actually going to use some of them. And then when I do, it'll sound like they're my ideas, not Heather's idea. See, that's what this is really all about. I told you last time I need writers. When you watch the Jimmy Fallon show, my main competition, honestly, Jimmy Fallon and I, we go back and forth when it comes to ratings. He doesn't write all of his own jokes. Come on, he's not that funny. He's not that creative. He has a whole staff. He has a whole team. I mean, wouldn't you love to work on the Jimmy Fallon show and write jokes for Jimmy Fallon? He doesn't write those jokes. But over here on the flip side, it's just me. Everything you get, it's coming from my brain. Well, guess what? My brain is empty. It's out. It's done. It's tapped out. So I need you. I need the audience to write in. To write in and send in ideas, which Heather did, so that is fantastic. And Daniel wrote in as well with some ideas, as well as wanting to join the Flipped Off, so that's fantastic. Now Heather, listen, I'm not a nurse. I'm gonna read the definition of a colostomy bag, just for everyone to know. medicalnewstoday.com. A colostomy bag is a plastic bag that collects fecal matter from the digestive tract through an opening in the abdominal wall called a stoma. Whoa. Okay, Heather, for real. Now look, that's a preview. That's a preview for today's Noah's Rant. I'm going to leave it there because some of you are friends with Sam and Tova, and you just want to get to the interview, and Sam and Tova might be listening to this episode going, what kind of podcast did we sign up for to be on? So I'm going to stop it there on that subject, but bookmark that. We'll be back for Noah's Rant today at the end of the show. For those of you that have never listened before, welcome. We do like to mix in the humor here. I like to hear from Heather that one other person in the universe thinks some of the things on this show are actually funny. I cannot guarantee that they all are. It's you shoot a lot of shots in basketball, a few of them go in, and you call it a day. That's kind of how it works around here. We do like to mix in the humor as we talk about very serious things as well, how the reality of the gospel I don't know my own tagline, connects with the grit of life. That's very close to my tagline. It's not the exact tagline, but it's a paraphrase. It's the message version of the tagline of this show. But thank you, Heather. I like to hear the permission, honestly, that it's helpful to hear a ministry leader, just having fun, trying to be funny, having some humor, a little sarcasm. That's good for us. We need some of that. So today's podcast, as always, is brought to you by Angry Brew Coffee. I'm drinking a little Angry Brew right now. Angry Brew is a dark roast, which is my favorite type of coffee, and it has double the caffeine of normal coffee. So check it out, angrybrew.com, also fivelakes.com. When you pick up a bag of Angry Brew or Chris's Blend and use the promo code FLIP, F-L-I-P, you get 10% off. And honestly, you're supporting the podcast. That's what you're doing. You're supporting the podcast. You're sending some love. So if you want some coffee and you want to send some love to the podcast, pick up a bag of Angry Brew or Chris's Blend. Last little bit of announcements before we get started with the interview. I am launching a new BeyondTheBattle.net group, so join in. This will be the last group that we ever do. Ever. You're really in suspense now. Before the new book comes out. So, the last book we ever do before the new book comes out, which comes out July 13th. So, if you want to get in on a group, you got to do it now. It's going to be Sunday nights starting May 2nd. So, depending on when you listen to this, it's starting very, very soon. BeyondTheBattle.net. Those are for guys. We do 7 weeks online, and you're going to have an awesome journey finding more freedom in your sexual purity, still a word I like to use. I know that word gets kind of thrown under the bus sometimes, but your battle against sexual sin, we go beyond the battle, and you're going to find freedom in Jesus when it comes to battling sexual sin. So, good stuff. Today, I am interviewing Sam and Tova Jones. They are the hosts. They are married, and they are the hosts of the Bizness of Marriage. It is spelled B-I-Z, Bizness of Marriage. They are quite active on social media, particularly Tova. Sam will introduce Tova as a social media maven, which is great. She's very active, and in fact, she really uses her social media as a discussion board for their podcast, talking about all things marriage and as well, singles and the various seasons of life that we're in. So you can check them out on Instagram and Facebook at Tova Jones and at Sam Jones 0608. Sam and Tova Jones have known each other for over 14 years from their college days. Married for now, yes, I am reading this. Married for now 7 years. Their journey has been one of entrepreneurial pursuits, changes of careers, a kid, and a focus on being driven to impact communities they've been a part of. As they are from different sides of the state of Michigan and are opposites at their cores, they feel life together has made them collectively better. Sam is a licensed counselor. He's also a pastor, and his counseling practice is called the Wisdom Center, and you can check that out at theprincipalthing.com. I didn't ask Sam about this, but he does do video counseling, and so I'm sure that's something you could track him down about if after you listen, you say, hey, I'd like that guy to give me some counseling. Theprincipalthing.com, or I'm sure you can reach out to Sam on his social media. And really my hope for this is that as you listen to Tova and Sam, they're a ton of fun. I love their podcast, and they have a ton of fun on their podcast. They really are a great mix of personality types and just the way God has wired them. As they wrote, they're opposites at their cores, and it really comes out in a fun way. So I'd encourage you to listen to their podcast. You know that I tend to go into droughts on the flip side, how many episodes we do. So when you're in a flip side drought, tune in to the Bizness of Marriage, B-I-Z, and subscribe and support Sam and Tova. So with that, let's turn it over to our interview as we talk about all things married and single. Hang in there, singles. We got a lot for you in this interview as well. All right, well, I am very pleased to welcome Sam and Tova Jones to the flip side. Thank you so much for being here, both of you.
Thank you so much for having us. We're excited.
Yeah.
Thank you.
we're on Zoom right now, like the rest of the world, and but in 3 places. So we're gonna roll this. I think you guys are my first guest where I've interviewed 2 people at once. So you're making podcast history here. This is pretty awesome.
And this is like episode 375 for you or something?
Almost. This is what's funny is, so you guys are serial entrepreneurs, yes. and I am as well. I really am as well. And this is my 5th iteration of a podcast, I think.
Wow.
So I that's not a good thing necessarily. I think sometimes with, Tova, you and I might be wired the same. I think in one of your episodes you guys talked about this, where I'm really good at starting things.
Oh, yeah.
And the maintenance of things, I get bored.
Yeah.
I get bored a little.
Yeah,
bit.
it has a hype for a while, and then about 6-7 months, you're like, I'm bored. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Thank God for a spouse.
Thank God for a spouse.
Thank you, Lord. Thank the Lord.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so the flip side, this is bad. I don't even know off the top of my head. This is like in the 40s for episodes of the flip side, but it's on the same thread as some of my old episodes because I don't want to. They're like my babies. I even though I don't do them anymore, I don't want to lose them. So they're still on the same thread. So not quite to 375. We'll see if we ever get there, but yeah. So the flip side, one of the things about it is we kind of talk about everything. That's one of the reasons I switched to this format. But I wrote a book for men on sexual purity, and we talk a lot about marriage and singleness and pornography and purity on the podcast. It's not the only thing we talk about. We talk about kind of a lot of different subjects, but certainly a lot of my listeners are used to me talking about that and writing about that. So that was one of the reasons I thought it'd be great to have you both on. I love your podcast, The Bizness of Marriage, and I thought we could just start there. I'd love for some of my listeners to get exposed to your podcast and check it out to strengthen their marriages and their walks with God. And so why don't we just start with your podcast, The Bizness of Marriage? How did you why did you start a podcast, and kind of fill our listeners in on what kind of stuff you talk about on there?
Yeah. So I think I want to start this 7 years ago, while me and my wife were in the process of dating and in the place of engagement. We wanted to, out of both of our desire to be creative, we wanted to be these individuals who, talked about our process of going from 2 to 1. And so literally 7 years ago, we did a whole YouTube video series.
Nice.
And like, hey, this is some things to think about. These are the things that we're working through. Did the whole surprise engagement thing, which we'll talk about that later. And then interviewing other couples who've been married for a couple years, just like that. And so in that process, we got started with these things, but then life hit. Like, talk about changing careers and jobs, talk about starting businesses. You spoke into the serial entrepreneurial piece. Then, several years later, again, changing careers again, meeting lots and tons of people in the community who were very influential in mentoring us. And we hit pause, and we're like, you know what, we got to get through some life, and we got to get through some stuff that's going on in our life. But all those things were like teaching points and experiences. And so when we desired to come back into this frame of, working together and talking about our experiences in life, and also talking about other people's experiences, also with me being a therapist and my wife being a social media maven, as I call her, there's these things where we're like, there's a lot of experience and information that we can share to communities that we have a lot of impact in and a lot of support in, but also to share to the greater community in the world, just about people who often cases are business people like us and have dreams and have desires and have visions, but also are just trying to figure out their marriage and trying to figure out how to talk about things that sometimes are cliche, or talk about things that sometimes are like, oh yeah, I shouldn't say that or shouldn't share that. But in many cases, we internalize stuff, man. And when we internalize stuff and don't talk about it, you're only living and operating based off of expectations that you don't say and don't share in the course of marriage and with other people. And so that is where just initially we came up with this idea and thought process of the business of marriage. Now that's Samuel's explanation. My wife's might be totally different. so babe, what do you add to that, honey? What do you think about why did we come up with the business of marriage?
I think also too, it was a type of therapy for me. This podcast idea came about right after I had my daughter. So I was kind of going through, the postpartum, I don't want to say depression, but postpartum woes. And I think as my husband, he knows that I love all things creative. I love talking and arts and all of that stuff. And I think he saw me in a place and was like, I think, if we do this podcast, not only can we help other couples about what we're going through and sharing our story and talking about what we've been through, I think it'll also help you, come out of what you're in as well. And honestly, Noah, it took us a long time. It was a point of contention in our marriage because he was ready to move, bought all the stuff, got all of the mics and then all the switchboards and everything. And I just wasn't ready. And so probably about, when my daughter turned 1, we were ready to get it going.
Yeah.
So what type of topics do you dive into on the business of marriage?
Listen, we talk about almost it all. So nice. We talk about business due to the fact that our whole marriage, we've been entrepreneurs. So between the 7 years of marriage that we have, we've probably had about 5 or 6 businesses. So that will let you know right there.
Yep.
So we talk about the lessons that we learned in business, what to do and what not to do, especially when you're in business as a couple. It's just some things that you can and cannot do or should not do. And we try to give insight to that, especially in a generation where entrepreneurship is praised. And, if you're not an entrepreneur, you feel left out. So we talk about all of those things. And then we also talk about what to do when you're waiting, when you're dating, and when you're married. So we kind of hit all of those aspects of marriage and waiting and dating.
Yep. So when you guys, talking about marriage, I've been married for, this June will be 17 years. So
wow.
Yeah.
Go Noah.
Yeah.
Go Noah and his wife.
Yeah. My wife's Jennifer, Jen, and her birthday was yesterday. So shout out to Jen, birthday. And it is crazy. Yeah. We started dating in college and we got married right after college. And, that's part of my journey. And I talk about that in the book as well. And some unrealistic expectations that I took into marriage and how unrealistic expectations backfired, and we had a very rough, particularly first 3 years of marriage. I write about how I wanted a divorce, and I was in a really dark spot as a Christian. I was really discontent and struggling with kind of really being allured by a promiscuous lifestyle that I by God's grace did not pursue, but I was close. And really the first half of our marriage, I would say the first 8 or 9 years. My view of love, it was pretty selfish. I loved my wife, but in the only with the type of love I knew, and that was a type of love where I always got something back. I got something out of the deal, and I'll say it's a lot more freeing when you learn to love your spouse for who they are as a person. Not for what you can get back, not for whether that's sexually often or just I want this thing to change, or they do this thing that bothers me, and I don't know. So that's a little bit of my story, and it as I reflect on 17 years, it really I think a good summary is going from selfish love to selfless love. And yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, you both have a lot of experience with your own marriage and with the couples, that you interact with via your podcasts and via counseling. And I just give you a little bit of my story to give you a little bit of a backdrop and maybe to get your minds going a little bit too. But what would you say are some of the biggest marriage issues that married couples are running into today, yourself included, if you want to share that, or just stuff that you run into as you're helping couples out there?
Yeah, I think that just off the top list, man, I'll start from a professional sense first, but from my aspect of being a therapist, man, I have seen just couples deal with, number one, communication. About every single couple I've seen, that was like their number one thing. It wasn't sex, which is a big one. It wasn't money, which is another huge one. It was communication. It's like, well, this person doesn't understand me, so that means they're not empathetic. This person is controlling, which means I don't really feel safe. This person is dealing with and navigating things from their past history or their own mental illness. And so now I'm trying to figure out what this person's personality is like, for real. Like, often cases where they're trying to figure out, or we're trying to figure out, how to communicate to someone that's different than us. Mm-hmm. And then let's just take it one ounce further. Some people are trying to figure out how to communicate with people who sometimes they are the same as. Mm-hmm. And that can be an even more dangerous thing in marriage, where you have somebody that's completely the same as you, and you're thinking about things, so you struggle to even have conversations or conflict. And so that is one of the biggest and one of the most common things that are happening in marriage. And I know for me and my wife, even like in our first 3 years of marriage, man, we lost our jobs. No, we quit our jobs. How about that? We quit our jobs. We wanted to jump into entrepreneurship. We struggled with finances. Thank God when we ran from certain things, thank God it didn't catch up to us. Like all these things, that being real, like going through those things, that's hard. You just get married, you're thinking about going on a honeymoon. Mm-hmm. We didn't go on the honeymoon until year 2. Mm-hmm. And so like some of the decisions that we made out of our aspirations and our dreams came from us not taking the time to communicate at a more in-depth level. Yes, I could help and support my wife emotionally. Yes, she could speak to my enormous dreams and thoughts and ideas about things and bring some realism to them. But then there are often cases, as in many cases with other relationships, that they don't navigate and deal with things from a deeper level. And then as you begin to live with somebody that you may or may not have ever lived with, things begin to pop up that are inconsistent with what you first believed. and then all of a sudden you're dealing with failed expectations, and then a sensation that you feel like things aren't going the way that you want. Right. Which is in many cases why a lot of marriages don't make it past 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Mm-hmm. And then
and that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, for so many couples, I think communication is one, but I also think about managing expectations. Mm-hmm. I think that was one of the things that we still work on to this day. Like, how do we manage or express our expectations, if that's with raising our daughter, our finances, what we see, being able to communicate our expectations effectively, and then being able to respond in a way that doesn't cause friction or doesn't cause dissension. But at the same time, if there needs to be a discussion or disagreement, we can say, hey, this is how we're handling expectations without, everything getting blown out of proportion. So I know for certain, a lot of couples, including ourselves, we have to learn how to balance, expectations, even when it's something that we don't like. We have to be able to manage that.
Yeah. And I think, Noah, that's like a big thing where like humility is so key in marriage. Like, because like me and my wife, like we both have the things that we gonna stand on, and we gonna be like, this is what I think, and this is what I do. Like me and my wife was real like about that, and we'll have some good standoffs, But I think that is where because we and my wife both have a relationship with the Lord, we often cases get checked quickly when it's like a level of accountability for us. It's like, okay, let me go in my prayer closet. Let me go hang out with the Lord a second, read my Bible, and go check in. So that way I can come back with some humility and also service to my spouse. Because if I go away for a second in the season, self-soothe in a sense, it only is going to help me when I go back and conversate about something that can become very conflictual very quick. And so that then allows me to be like, okay, what is it that you need in this? How did I say this? How did this come across? What does this mean to you? And work that thing out. So that way I don't got to go to bed, extremely angry at you about something that just needed to be, quickly conversated about with understanding and empathy.
Right.
And that's often cases a key piece for us and key pieces for many people who are in a relationship.
Yeah, I think that humility and empathy piece is huge when it comes to, I've heard you talk a couple times about the importance of talking about things. Yeah. I know I got in this habit in my marriage where I just kind of thought, okay, my wife is doing this thing that I don't like or that I disagree with or whatever, one of those things. And I honestly thought I was just kind of spiritual enough to gut it out. Like I don't need that from her, so I can just gut it out with God will give me the strength I need. His love will sustain me. And, I don't want to, I'm not saying, God's love will sustain you, but the problem is what my habit was is I would just stuff those things under the carpet and act like I wasn't going to get all resentful about it. And then I would. And it wasn't even a conscious choice. I just got resentful, right? And it built up over time. And when that resentment built up, man, that takes me to a really dark place, And so we, my wife and I, we just finished a pretty long round of marriage counseling earlier this year. And I recommend that for couples. It's not like marriage counseling is only for after somebody cheats or, when you're about ready to get a divorce. It's maintenance on your marriage is really important. Yeah. And, taking the stigma away from that is really important. So we are working on some things. And I think the biggest thing revealed to me was the need. One of the reasons I wasn't sharing those things was I just wanted to avoid that hard conversation, and I didn't have the skills, those humility and empathy skills. We were lacking in those two, in those things, the humility and the empathy for when you're talking to your spouse. And so let's talk about that a little bit more. Can either of you give some tips or advice or examples on what does humility and empathy look like? And those are two different things, but they go hand in hand. You need humility to have empathy for sure. But just some tips. Not everybody's empathetic. Not everybody just naturally is empathetic, but it's a huge, man, you've got to have empathy in a marriage when you're dealing with stuff. So can you give advice or tips on, for somebody that's not good at that, or they need that in their marriage, on how they can grow in that?
Right.
I think I'll go because I'm sure mine's going to be shorter. Sam's a therapist, so he has the toolbox to dig in and give you the real, textbook answer. But for me, for someone who lives this out with the therapist, I would say that you have to be okay with being wrong. Number one, I think. You married this person because you love them. You have their best interest at heart. And I think you have to be willing to always keep that at the forefront of whatever you do. So even if you can't always say, I feel what you feel, or I empathize with what you're going through, no matter what, I love you and I have your best interest at heart. So what I'm going to say, what I'm going to do, my actions, the steps that I'm taking should always reflect that. That's number one. I think number two is, once again, not being afraid to be wrong and be vulnerable, because once again, your spouse is supposed to love you and have your best interest at heart. So you have to be vulnerable in order to be humble, in order to be wrong, because No one likes to be wrong. So I think just working and building on the relationship where everyone feels safe, where everyone feels valued, allows those conversations to transpire, because it's like, I know you won't throw this back up in my face. I know you're not going to say, I told you so. I know you're not going to make me feel worse, you know? And so I think just creating that space of vulnerability and trust is where you have to start in order for there to be any genuine, open communication of any kind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really good. That's true. And I really would just build off what my wife said. I think there's empathy and honesty and all those pieces are principles and core values. But then you have to go back to the aspect of trust, right? My wife said, does your spouse really have your best interest at heart? And if you believe they do, then you operate differently than you would if you question it. When you question it, you're only going to question everything else. If trust is a question, guess what? It's different to say, do I trust you versus I trust you, a statement versus a question. And when you have those questions in your heart about your spouse, it only is going to make you be in a place where you're thinking like, I don't know if they will understand me. Right? I don't know if they are being honest. Are they at work or are they somewhere else? I don't know if they are. And when you have questions, it only means that you should begin to have more of an open dialogue with your spouse about those things. It's okay, because I think here's the thing about spouses. Spouses, whether it's the wife or the husband, especially if you have an observant one in your family, are often going to look at things from a perspective of what do I see versus what is actually happening.
Yep.
And when you're seeing those things and you're observing those, especially if you're the observer in your relationship, you know, you're going to question many, many things. Then you have the person that is, you know, taking care of their business, doing all the work, especially if they feel like what they do, their work speaks for itself. That person probably is not going to be as verbal. And when they're more based off of action and desire and things of getting things done, then that person's always going to feel like, well, I do so much and I give so much to the family that why am I being questioned? Right? You often have that going on in a relationship. You have that go on in me and my wife's relationship often cases. The observer versus the person that's the doer. And then sometimes we switch roles. And so as it relates back to empathy and honesty and all those aspects, the key piece there is, okay, when you have an open dialogue with someone, it really is, number one, believing that, okay, we both have each other's best interests at heart. So we're open enough to sometimes know that if this conversation has an edge to it, if it feels like it's going to be hurtful a little bit, I trust that you are not trying to be my enemy. That's number one. Yeah. Like you gotta trust. Hi, it's my baby's in there. I trust that you're not my enemy. And if you're not my enemy and that we're going to have an open conversation, I believe that you're going to have my best interest at heart. Let's just start there with the ground layer. And that's the first tip. I think a secondary tip to that then is, if that's the ground layer and you believe that, you things are going to be good in an open dialogue, it's good to put that open dialogue in particular moments. Like what I've seen, Noah, and this is me and my wife's relationship too, is we'll end up putting ourselves in places where if we're going on date night and the date night is about enjoyment and having fun and speaking life to each other, looking at each other with googly eyes about what we're going to do later, like all those things, that's a moment for that. But if we need to have a moment where we need to have a serious conversation, then let's have that moment individually separate from that. Sometimes, you know, couples get into a place where they're trying to blend all these moments together. And then I've been building up my hostility for a whole month. And now I'm waiting for this moment to let it all out and go all in on my spouse because I'm having an issue. No, out of empathy, it would be like, let's have certain moments for certain times. Let's have them regularly. Right. So that way I don't end up being in a place, or she doesn't end up being in a place where we have all these things built up. Because out of understanding your spouse, true empathy is practicing, okay, I know that not only do I want to put myself in another person's shoes, but I also want to put myself in a place that if I'm going to bring up issues and problems that I have, let me pick one issue, one problem, and also let me have a time that they pick one issue and one problem, and we deal with that thing to find some level of level playing field and being honest, so that way we can ground and support each other in that moment. Like all those things are key, you know, in regards to walking those things and how you can apply those things out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tova, you can welcome our third interviewee to the conversation if you'd like. If you want to introduce to the flip side audience here.
Flip side, I would love to introduce you to my daughter. She's running rampant right now. So if you hear baby talks and the color yellow being screamed
Nice.
Throughout this podcast, it is Olivia. She did not sleep her whole bedtime. Her nap.
All right. Well, welcome, Olivia. We welcome any contributions that Olivia makes to the podcast. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I forgot to tell you guys, my 3-year-old Brooklyn is upstairs right now. Her daycare is closed for 2 weeks because they had like a COVID kid, case there. They had to close down for 2 weeks. So yeah, it's been a fun couple of weeks of working from home, and so maybe we'll get a fourth contributor soon if she comes downstairs. So,
let's just make it a family affair.
That's right.
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Tova, did you want to add anything to what Sam said about the how do we talk through those sort of hard conversations and working on the empathy and humility piece?
No, I think you really touched on it. I think just having the conversation, we can't be afraid to disagree. Yeah. And I know in marriage, when we first got married, I was like, I don't want to have an argument.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have a disagreement. It's not you don't want to argue. You don't want to have a yelling match. But in order to get things solidified and to settle some things, you have to disagree. But you have to learn how to disagree and how to not, go below the belt, but how to express yourself and come up with a solution. I think a lot of times disagreements, remain unresolved because there's no solution. Yeah. I think when you have in mind, like, we're having this disagreement because we need to come to a solution, a compromise, not to hurt your feelings, not to say that I'm right and you're wrong. It's really for the betterment of our family. And so just don't be afraid of those hard conversations, because normally if you do it correctly, you'll find things out about your spouse that you didn't know. And then you'll know for the next time to keep that in your toolbox to say, hey, I know they don't like this. I know, kind of ticks them off when I do this. Those are learning experiences that you learn from during disagreements.
Yeah. And I'll add to that, like, me and my wife, we'll watch various churches and various men of God, women of God speak and teach on certain things. One thing that really hit us over the past 2 months was there was this person by the name of Robert Madu out of Social Church Dallas. And he said something, he was speaking at a particular church one day that really hit me. He said, pride hides. Even though often cases we think humility is hidden, pride hides. Mm-hmm. And in that frame of thinking, what I got from that was, in the context of marriage, out of humility, sometimes we think that, well, my wife or my husband doesn't need to know or doesn't need to, I'm just dealing with this by myself. In the same way, in many cases, when we try to deal with things by ourselves, we often disclude God. And if we disclude God, we're only going to actually also disclude our spouse too, in many cases. Yeah. And so in discluding, it's like I'm trying to handle something that I don't believe either grants the worthiness of being a topic of discussion or something that I just need to deal with by myself. No. Yeah. Marriage, in many cases, you're bringing an individual context, but once you're walking into oneness, your spouse should be able to help and support you and navigate things, just like God helps you support and navigate things. That's why the two become one. And I think that in that process, man, humility often cases is, I'm not going to hide or be hidden in things that I want and need to be revealed to be helpful for our relationship as well as my own relationship, because I believe you'll help me heal just like I'll help you heal in things that we need to work through. And so those things are really important, man.
Yeah. Something that I experienced recently in my marriage that relates to this is, you talked earlier about how, you talked about the idea of trust, and you when you start asking that question, essentially you're questioning the character of your spouse. You're going, does my spouse really have my best interest? I know some listeners might go, well, that might be nice if you have a spouse that has your best interest, but here's what I was doing. I think this is what happens, and it's a downward spiral. When when you don't talk about this stuff, like when you don't get it out on the table, it stays in your head and it festers there. And it's really not like any other. It's a very psychological fact, right? When stuff just stays in our head, it festers. And what I was doing is I was creating a caricature of my wife that wasn't actually her, right? And I was attributing negative traits to her that weren't actually true of her. I was making assumptions about her and her motives and her heart because of the way I was just interpreting and experiencing, some external things. And then it's a downward spiral because I had created that caricature of her as, fill in the blank. She's this, she's that, she's this. Then when those things would happen again, it would just reinforce that caricature. And then you go, I don't want to talk to that person about this stuff. I don't want to put this stuff on the table because they're like this. They're, you fill in the blanks of the caricature that you made. Exactly. And what I found, and some of it was even through this recent round of marriage counseling, was the exercise. It's actually an exercise of talking about this stuff, of talking about your, the stuff you're resentful about, and doing it in a way that, doing it in a way that's helpful, doing it in a way that's loving and helpful and empathetic. I listened to the audio book of a book called Nonviolent Communication. That was a really good book. My counselor recommended for me, and it just gave some tools and tips. They're out there. There's tips out there on how to just talk in a way that can be received. Because I think a lot of times we just shout at each other. My wife and I aren't really shouters, but we certainly are. We're debaters. We're lawyers. That's kind of how we talk through things. And it doesn't end well when you do. But anyway, my point to all this is I love what you're saying, and I think it's something that, man, couples really need, because I know I really need it, and I think it just looks different in every relationship. But it's a simple principle of talk about the hard stuff. And when you do, it gets out on the table. And in my marriage, it's what allowed me to empathize with my wife. She was able to share with me where she was coming from, why she was feeling the way she was feeling. And I do love my wife. And so I was then able to go, oh, that's why you feel that way. That's why you do things that way. And it changed that caricature that I had developed, it evaporated. But I would also say this is an ongoing thing. I don't think it's a one-time thing. I think it's something, it's a muscle you have to keep working and practicing in a marriage. So, man, thank you. That's some really, really practical, helpful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, man, like, whether you call it a caricature or you call it voices in your head, we all do it, man. Yeah. We all have these moments in our lives where we believe, our spouse is one way. We think, especially if we hold things in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now, extroverts and introverts may do it differently, but we all hold things in, and in holding those things in, when we don't share or give voice to certain pieces, in often cases, you're right, we begin to say and believe that a person is a certain way, and we don't give them a chance to express, because even in seasons often shift and change in the course of marriage. You're married 7 years, you're married 14 years, you're married 21, 28, the 7-year cycles of marriage. And like in those seasons, as people are changing, expectations are changing, people's bodies are changing, all these things are happening. And so imagine a marriage that's been together for 20, 30 years, and you have all these things that you never was willing to converse. And when you get in that moment where you finally let it out, it's empty nest in your household. Most of these people you're hearing can't make it through COVID and are getting divorced, are going through these issues and problems because they haven't really conversed and talked about the things that are needed to be said. And so going back to the younger marriages during this time, it's like there's a huge encouragement from yourself, from us, from others who are in the world of media and podcasting to be like, yo, have some conversations, even if they're tough. Make sure you put them in particular moments.
Yeah.
Make sure you put one issue at a time. Make sure you have some resolution with it or come to some agreement on what it is, and then navigate that thing so that way you can keep it moving and keep growing. because the worst thing in marriage is to stop growing and to feel like you're by yourself, you know. And in those moments where you feel like by yourself, often cases it's not that you've gone unheard, it's that someone else is listening to you and giving you the attention that you need, and then therefore an affair happens.
Right.
And so, you know, we can have affairs not just with people, but we can have affairs with information and with something else that we fall in love with. And then all of a sudden we've now coming out of a place where I want to be with someone else or something else, but not my spouse, because they have my attention. So many things that come from it, bro. Yeah.
That's huge. Tova, do you want to jump in on anything for married folks before I'm going to transition us over to our single friends out there. Any last words for married folks?
Nope. Just do the work.
Do the work.
That's for married folk. Just do the work. Marriage is good, but it is work.
Yep.
So if you have to put in the work, so get to work.
Get to work. I love it. That's such a good word. I think especially for Christians, I don't know. We feel like we've got God, we got the Holy Spirit, we love Jesus. You know, it's all going to be good. It's like, nope, you got to do the work too.
Right. Jesus had to do work. Everybody, we all got to do it. Jesus had to do work. You got to do work.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about singleness. Let's talk to our single friends, our single brothers and sisters who are listening. I think often, and I'll be honest. Let me give this a quick preface of where I'm at with this. I feel for single Christians particularly. I think often in the church we make marriage maybe even an idol. We certainly can fixate on marriage as if it is the only thing in churches. You hear a lot of sermons on marriage, not many sermons on singleness. And one thing for me, I got married very young, but when I was in college and single and was really where I was working through my sexual sins or, pornography issues, sexual purity issues for the first time, the books that I read, the books I was reading with other single guys, they primarily were just written to married guys, and their solution to, sexual temptation, lust, pornography, it was, look to your wife, go to your wife, have sex with your wife. And it's like, well, first of all, that's not good advice anyway, but that's not what this interview is about. I have a book on that if you're interested. But I'm single. I don't even have a wife, like how can I look to my wife? That doesn't make any sense at all. And then there's often also this assumption that if you're single, you're gonna get married someday. So and I don't want to get it wrong. It is important that we prepare our singles for marriage. So feel free to do that. But not every single is going to get married. And some of that is by choice. Most of it's not by choice. For many singles, it's a very hard, the most difficult thing they wrestle with. And some are getting older and they're going, stop acting to the church like I'm going to get married someday. Some aren't attracted to the other gender, and they're Christians, and they're following, the Bible's design for sex and marriage, and they're going, okay, well, for me, I can't marry a man if I'm a woman, and if I'm a woman, I can't marry a man, and here the church is telling me, go get married, and all your problems will be solved. So let's talk to singles, but I do want to do it with in mind that we have singles who, yes, are going to get married, and let's prep them for that, and other singles that aren't. They are not going to get married, and we have to have a path in these conversations that they are whole and they can live a full life and have a full part of the church. So that's my rant. That's my rant on singles, but I love my singles, and I hate it when singles get alienated, in these conversations. So, and I know on your podcast you talk to singles and talk about singleness. So let's just kind of open it up. Let's just start with what do you want to say? What do you want to say to singles that are listening in on this conversation today?
Yeah, I would say singles, live in this season, because once you get married, this season is over. And I'm not saying that to be like, listen, being able to wake up when you want, to feed yourself when you want, if you want to eat McDonald's every day of the week, if you want, to pick up and go on vacation if you want, to sleep in if you want
Yep.
to, you know, so many decisions. And the Bible even talks about what transpires. Like now, you know, the Bible talks about your time belongs to the church, meaning you can do, you know, your community service, you can work in ministry, you can do all of this in your single season. When you get married, your time, your body belongs to your spouse. You no longer are your own. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so I just say, instead of hoping and wishing that you were in another season, enjoy the season that you're in right now. Because when you do get married, you're going into another season. Then when you have children, you're going into another season. So enjoy this season, live it to the max. We have a ton of single female friends that are like sisters to us, and they all want to get married so bad. And I understand the culture that we're in, being in church is pushed down your throat. But I always tell them, travel, learn yourself. Because when you, not saying that when you marry, you don't have time to learn who you are, but at that point, you have to learn someone else as well. You have to learn what they like, what they do. Take this time to really focus on you. Let's talk about self-care. Take this time to self-care and self-love on yourself so much that when somebody comes that is attracted to you, they have to put in that same effort to catch you. For women, I only can speak from a woman's perspective. You know, take that time to really know who you are, so that when you are joined with someone in marriage, that season, you like, I know who I am. You can clearly express your expectations. You know what you like and don't like, because you've taken that time to self-learn and to self-love. So what I say to singles, especially single women, enjoy this season, honey.
Love it. What about you, Sam?
Yeah. You know, I think being single, and I'll talk about my experience as well as just in general, being single is literally being a learner of the academy of you. Being a learner of the academy of you. Because if you think of yourself as let's use university language. Like, if you think of yourself as like this person who is an institution, and in your institution, you have so many things that are guiding you. All this information, all this knowledge and wisdom, this experiences that you have, the context of your entire life. These things are always like teaching you about who you are, what you believe, your identity, your core values, all these things that should matter. And at the end of the day, like whether you get married or you desire not to get married, how much have you really, in a sense, become honest and true about in terms of who you are? Because so many people, single and married, struggle with the aspect of who am I at the end of the day? And the time that you have to invest in yourself during your single stage is a time to just truly learn yourself. Because who wants to here's the problem that we often see in marriage, just connecting it back, is people get married and they don't even know who they are, Noah. They have no idea. They have no idea, and they're waiting for their spouse to come help explain and give them value when they should have been seeking value for themselves all along.
Yeah.
And I think that in those moments, man, it's like the academy of you really is just aspect of, you know what, I'm going to take time and get through all my traumas. I'm going to take time and get through all the experiences where I didn't feel like I was enough, or maybe I felt like I was more than enough. I'm going to take time to work through all the context of my life. Right? The things that informed me, the things that I loved, the things that I did not love, the experiences that I had with people that I dated, the people that I fell out of friendship with and relationship with, and take time to synthesize that data. Take time to me. And then as I go about the course of the day, as I go about the course of my life, my career, my first house as a single, whether it's, you know, me moving and traveling from place to place because I love to be an extrovert, whatever those things are, taking time to almost sense mature in that. It helps you grow. So that way, whether you decide to get married or not, you have come to some level of maturity of this aspect of this academy of who you are. So that when someone comes alongside, if you want to get married, they're like, yeah, I got to invest my entire life into this person. A la marriage. I'm investing my life into this person who understands who they are. Or if I'm not going to get married, I'm going to fully continually invest in who I am and what I believe I'm called to do. So that way I can leave a tremendous impact on this world, my community, my family, and enjoy what I do and be good.
Yeah.
But it takes time to do those things in that individual single season, bro.
Yep. Yeah, that's huge. I hear you saying, and I just shared this with our young adults 2 nights ago, most of whom are single, in my pastoral role. And there's a myth out there that marriage will make you whole. You know, that myth of you complete me, the Jerry Maguire line, you know, you complete me. And man, you know, I love looking at Jesus's example of singleness and Paul's example of singleness and just going, they were whole. Like, they were whole people as singles. Marriage doesn't complete you. A spouse doesn't complete you. And you're talking about doing that work, you know, and there's a huge spiritual component in that work as well, that you are a beloved daughter of the Father. You are a beloved son of the Father. You are a whole person. And if you get married, that's awesome, because you can bring that whole person, you know, to another person as a gift. And if you never get married, like Jesus or Paul or many, many others, you're still a whole person. You still have that whole gift to give to the world. Your love tank is already full because it's full from the Father, you know, given to you through Jesus. That's huge, and that takes work, right? I don't mean that as a Sunday school answer. I mean that as a, you know, that takes work. And Tova, you were hitting on this too, on living your life. I think the biggest thing for singles is don't isolate yourself, you know, and especially, we learned this in COVID, right? But I mean, especially today, it's so easy to just binge on Netflix, play video games, particularly for men, just binge out on technology, social media, even, you know, where you're like, I'm single, I'm not married, and so I have to isolate myself from community. It's going to look different for different people, but man, that's my number one advice, especially, you know, single guys struggling with pornography. There's lots of ways to attack that, but one of the main ways, don't isolate yourself. Be in community. Be disciplined about your community. Like, make sure you know, yes, be in a church small group, but more than that, you know, be walking with people, doing life with people, and initiate it. You can be the initiator. You don't have to wait for people to call you. You can call them. I just think that's so big. I think that's so big. So that's big stuff. Well, hey, let me give you one kind of the last word. What would you what do you want to say to listeners about anything? Could be about marriage, about singleness, about walking with God, about life, about business. Let me give you each a last word before we sign off here.
Go ahead, babe.
I would just say, for both married and single, enjoy the season that you're in. I think so many times single people wish they were married, and then some married people be daydreaming, thinking about the good old days when it was just them.
Yeah.
I would just say, embrace the season that you're in. I think COVID taught us so much that life is so precious, and life sometimes is but a vapor. You here today. Some people say here today, gone tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Some people here today and gone today.
Yeah.
And you want to maximize on every moment of the season that you're in. If you're unmarried, maximize on that. Get your credit together. Build relationships with your family. Don't wait to say, I'm going to wait till I get married to do this. No, live in the season that you're in. And married folks, we married. We in this thing now. Have fun. Live life. Go to counseling. Be proactive instead of reactive. Going to counseling isn't because always, it shouldn't be because you at the end of your rope. Because at that point, most people want to throw in the towel anyway.
Yeah.
Just go once a month just to have a third party just sit and help with your communication skills. Just be proactive instead of reactive and embrace the season that you're in. Don't wait till the kids graduate and you're an empty nester. Do what you need to do now and enjoy your season now.
Love it.
That's great. I kudos what my wife said. She covered the spectrum. Last thing I'll just say, and this speaks directly to our married couples, even those who are married and trying to figure out how to navigate life right now in this season, like, don't be afraid to have evaluation in your marriage. You know, you hear jobs, businesses talk about evaluation. Some people are scared of evaluation because for them, it only talks about performance, and people have performance anxiety all the time. And so in relationship to evaluation, it only means that, you know what, because I love you, I want to know how I'm doing.
Yeah.
Am I pleasing you? Am I the man or woman of your dreams that you first might have thought of? Am I reaching the expectations that you gave me? You know, asking your spouse evaluative questions by season, whether it's quarterly or during anniversary time. Me and my wife do it during our anniversary. It's helpful so that way you can always check in to know, you know what do you need from me? How can I serve you? How am I serving you? How am I supporting you? And asking those questions, even though you might get a whole bunch of no's, it only helps you know and be empathetic towards what does my spouse need now, not just what they needed before 7, 15, 20, 35 years ago. What do they need now?
Yeah, it's huge.
You know, and I think that those things are key. Love
it. Sam goes by Sam, Samuel. Just don't call him Sammy. Tova,
Hello.
and
Olivia.
Olivia. The three of you have been wonderful. Oh, there she is. There she is giving her last word.
Right.
I love it. Yes. Tell us all about it, Olivia. Tell us all about it. That's a good word.
Tell him the real truth, girl.
The real truth. Tell me all about yellow. Tell me about yellow. Now she's singing. I love it.
I know. Now she's just showing out.
Well, hey, if you want to hear more, check out the Bizness of Marriage, B-I-Z, Bizness of Marriage, to hear more from Sam and Tova and maybe Olivia. I don't know. You can check it out. Nope, she doesn't make it onto the Bizness of Marriage. Maybe someday she'll get on there. She'll be the heir apparent. Thank you so much to both of you for joining me today on the flip side. It was so great to have you. Thanks.
Yes, it was awesome.
Hey, thanks, Noah. Appreciate you, man.
Welcome back to the rest of the podcast. That was a super fun interview. I hope you enjoyed it. And as I said, check out the Bizness of Marriage, B-I-Z, wherever you find your podcast. Subscribe. Give some love to Sam and Tova. Leave a review. Speaking of reviews, leave a review for the flip side. You know what's crazy? Here's a rant. I'm not even to Noah's rant yet, but here's a pre-rant rant. Here's a preseason rant, a warm-up rant. iTunes makes it so hard to leave a review. You should get a prize. You should get a gift card if you figure out how to leave a review on iTunes, or if it's not even called iTunes anymore. There's another rant. Stop changing the name of everything. Apple Podcasts. Just call it iTunes. Leave the Apple Store, the iTunes Store, the way it was. Stop changing things. I'm an old grumpy old man. I'm an old curmudgeon. I don't want you to. I hate change. I really do hate change. There's another rant. I got all these rants coming out my ears now. These aren't even the rant. When Facebook and Google and well, not really Google because it's different, but Facebook, iTunes, when they change their format, I hate that. I know where everything is. Why would you go change the format when? Like, are you intentionally trying to just be cruel? Hey, everybody knows where everything is. It's awesome. Watch this. It's like the ant farm that you shake up, you know? Let's watch us just mess up their lives for fun because we're cruel, evil, maniacal maniacs. Okay, that's basically my take on iTunes. Changing all the time. I hate it. I like the iTunes of 15 years ago. We just sort all your songs and artists, and it's all right there. I don't even know how I started talking about this. I just got into rant mode, and I'm not even to Noah's rant yet. I haven't even given the warning for intelligent, mature, well-balanced people to stop listening at this point. So this is your warning. So Noah's rant we do not every episode, and there is still an ultimatum out. If you want more Noah's rant, you need to tell me. You got to pay for it. Because this Noah's rant, I got to go take a nap after I do Noah's rant. And so you got to pay by emailing me and telling me that you want more Noah's rant. And you can send me your ideas. I am open for ideas. I'm recruiting writing team. So send it in. And Noah's rant, it is utter ridiculousness. I do not have an anger problem. I do drink Angry Brew coffee, which sponsors Noah's rant. I do not have an anger problem. I mean, I do have an anger problem, but that's not what that's when you hear me ranting. I really am okay. I really am. I really don't think this is how you should solve life's problems, except that I do, because that's what Noah's rant is. So it's sarcastic. It's stupid. Most intelligent, mature, well-balanced people, enlightened people, you'll turn you want to turn the podcast off. We'll see you next time. But if you keep listening from this point on, not my fault. Don't send me your emails about how horrible of a person I am. I told you to stop listening. I'm the kind enough person to tell you now, stop. Just click pause, click stop. Don't listen anymore. Okay. So if you're still listening, totally your fault. I wash my hands of this. It is not my responsibility in any way, shape, or form what happens next. Noah's rant.
Noah's rant.
All right, so for real, let's get back to Heather's email about being a nurse, the colostomy bags. For real. Okay, I could never be a nurse, first of all. I could never be a nurse. The blood, oh man, for real. I don't like seeing my own blood. I don't like seeing other people's blood. I got to be careful with this Noah's rant, because Noah's rant does have standards. Noah's rant does have boundaries. I mean, I seriously try to not make you want to vomit from listening to Noah's rant. Yes, I do have a 9, 7, and 3-year-old. Yes, we talk a lot about poop and farting and diarrhea at my house. There's many jokes around these subjects. In fact, speaking of that, did you know if you have an Alexa, an Echo Dot, if you ask Alexa to make a fart sound, I highly recommend that. I highly recommend you ask Alexa that, especially if you have children. It is fantastic. It is so fantastic that somebody programmed in the plethora of fart sounds that are in Alexa. But I try to keep it a little bit clean on Noah's rant. But today, we're talking about nursing. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard because here's the deal. And this is not an anti-nurse rant. This is a pro-nurse rant. I often go through my normal day not appreciating nurses, not appreciating what they do and what they do every day, let alone with COVID going on, and how hard their jobs are and how thankless their jobs are. So Heather wrote in, and she's a nurse, and she talks about how please don't create a Noah's rant. They make me feel like there's another person out there who does this when I go over and above about the colostomy bag that just appeared in the supply room. So there's some kind of commentary going on at Heather's hospital about the colostomy bags. They're having a Heather's rant moment. Maybe there's I don't know. I'm not a nurse. I'm not in on this inside information about the color commentary, the play-by-play of it goes on as various colostomy bags enter into the supply room. But let me just say this: and then look, I'm not knocking you if you're ill in a patient and you have a colostomy bag. Please don't cancel culture me that I'm talking about colostomy bags. You blame Heather, completely her fault. She's my writer, and look, it's just not a part of my normal world. I don't go through my day thinking there's supply rooms in all of these hospitals filled with colostomy bags. And that nurses, hardworking men and women like Heather, have to deal with these things. I don't want that job. I'm just telling you right now, I don't want that job. And nurses are very, very hardworking people. They're on the front lines. And this is what this rant's about. Nurses don't get enough appreciation. Nurses don't get enough thanks for the jobs that they do to keep us all healthy, to take care of us. I don't know how much nurses get paid, but whatever it is, it should be tripled. That's what this rant's about. If nurses get paid $50,000, pay them $150,000. If they get paid $150,000, pay them $450,000. Whatever you make, I want you to go to your boss at the hospital, whoever that is, whoever runs the show, and have them listen to Noah's rant, of course. They probably already have, but in case they missed this one, have them listen to it and just let them know that I declare all nurses should be paid triple. Whatever you're paid, triple it. That is what you deserve. That you have to deal. You might have to deal with my colostomy bag someday. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds in my health, and I can't even imagine what that experience would be like for you. And whatever thanks you're getting, whatever appreciation you're getting, whatever like baked goods people bring to you to tell you thank you, it all should be tripled. You're amazing. You do a wonderful, fantastic job, and slackers like me go through their whole life without thanking you for the incredible job you do. So next time, nurses, when you're out on the battlefield and you're comparing colostomy bags, or you're doing all the crazy, gross, nasty stuff that you have to do, may you think of Noah's rant. May your heart be warmed that I am ranting on your behalf, that we are here to make the world a better place, to bring Jesus' kingdom here, his kingdom come, his will be done in those hospitals and in those supply rooms and in your life. So I think we've done that today. I think we have made the world a better place. I tell you what, I am so glad I give that warning and disclaimer for all, high-functioning, mature, educated people to turn off the podcast. I'm so thankful I do that, because otherwise I cannot imagine what those people would think of me and this entire podcast. It's unbelievable. So with that, check out beyondthebattle.net if you want to join a 7-week small group with me, and I will see you next time on The Flip Side.
The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak is a South Francis Press production. Copyright Noah Filipiak. www.noahfilipiak.com. Theme music by Kyle Lake at K-Lake Music. Used with permission. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or wherever podcasts are found.
Souls needing revivals, what I do? Influence like the cup full of that Bombay. Kelly's to them Tom Hanks, Lexus to them Andres. Hoping they check it, my inner reverence, stressing for leverage. That they see the king's tracks on the payment leading to heaven. Yo, dripping in that gold that don't perish. People selling fake, see the green around their belly. Aching refuge in his hand, see his palms, my living quarters. Close them when I'm finished, it's time to bring me closer. There's no purgatory, cause you're in or you're out. When you see him in the clouds, then you know it's going down. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is with your days. Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Tripping upon the premise, see lyrics painting the image, pointing to redemption to the one who got them splinters. Cause that cross is nothing pretty, so why the beauty pageants and caught up in emotions and following your passions. Talking that freedom, all people need them more than an Easter or coffee shop discussions, debating over baristas. Please, sir, this is why we inked up. Even when they do the autopsy, they still see him. Freedom coming quickly. Bars from the spirit, put it through the preamp and mix it like a chemist. Put it in the airwaves and hoping that they hear it. If there's some confusion, then I hope you see him clearly. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but sure it's what your gaze is.